Angeles. Welcome to Eagle News International. Good evening, CJ.
Good evening, Alma, and good evening to everyone joining the broadcast. There are headlines.
Some are no longer required to wear face shields outdoors.
United States authorized the use of boosters of Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine for people over 65, as well as adults at high risk of severe disease and those in high exposure.
The World Health Organization strengthens its air quality guidelines as WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus says air pollution contributes to 7 million deaths a year.
And the robot deliveries taking off in Taiwan.
First here in the country, the Octa Research Group today said the COVID-19 reproduction number in the National Capital Region has decreased to 0.99 and continued to show signs of improvement. Octa Research Group fellow Professor Guido David noted the decrease was from 1.03 reproduction number recorded from September 15 to the 21st. Let's listen in.
Mga figures na nakikita natin sa bansa natin, at least sa selected regions, ito masasabi natin yung reproduction number sa Metro Manila ay bumaba na less than 1, it's 0.99. Meron din tayong 1-week growth rate na minus 20%. Ibig sabihin, yung average na bilang ng kaso ngayong linggo, 4,600, mas mababa yan ng 20% kesa nung nakaraan na linggo na 5,800. So malaking binawas yan, 1,200 cases ang nabawas sa daily average natin, 7-day average. At hindi lang sa Metro Manila, sa Cavite rin, ang reproduction number, 0.87. Sa Laguna, 0.90 ang reproduction number, less than 1 na rin. Sa Bulacan, 0.86 ang reproduction number. Sa Cebu City, alam natin na less than 1 na, 0.66 ang reproduction number. At sa Davao City, nasa 1 na rin yung reproduction number. So hindi lang sa Metro Manila ang nakita nating improvement, pati rin na rin sa mga ibang regions, metropolitan areas sa buong Pilipinas. Ngayon pa man, syempre, gusto natin linawin na nagsisimula pa lang yung pagbaba ng bilang ng kaso. May kataasan pa rin yung bilang ng kaso, kaya kailangan pa rin patuloy pa rin yung pagsunod natin sa mga health protocols at may mga regions rin, USEC, na sa Region 2 na nagsisimula pa lang or tumataas pa lang yung bilang ng kaso. Kaya kailangan patuloy pa rin yung pag-iingat natin. Bawat isang tao, hindi na, well, 1 ang nahahawaan ng bawat isang taong may dala ng virus. So parang 1:1 pa rin, pero slightly less than 1 na yan. Ibig sabihin, bumabagal na yung pagkakahawaan. Pero syempre, kailangan pa rin patuloy yung pag-iingat natin sa hospitals. Mataas pa rin yung cases natin sa hospitals. Kaya gusto natin ma-remind yung ating mga kababayan na mag-ingat tayo pa rin.
In other news, Filipinos are no longer required to wear face shields outdoors. That according to President Rodrigo Duterte on Wednesday. Duterte made the pronouncement as he approved the recommendation of the Technical Advisory Group to limit the use of face shields to the so-called 3 Cs, which refers to closed and crowded spaces and activities that promote close contact. Take a look.
Pwede na tanggalin sa labas. No more face shields outside. Ang limitasyon, ang face shields gamitin mo 3 Cs, closed, whatever facility, hospital, o basta magkadikit-dikit. Crowded. Ganun rin. It's a crowded room, tapos close lahat, mas delikado, at saka ang close contact kung magkadikit-dikit ang tao. Other than that, I have ordered, kung ganun lang naman, sabi ko, then I will order that we accept the recommendation itong Executive Department.
However, a recent study by The Lancet, a leading international medical journal, found that wearing a mask can decrease the risk of catching COVID-19 by 78%. The result of the study also showed that the risk of transmission is cut by 85% if a face shield is worn in addition to the mask.
Meanwhile, the National Task Force Against COVID-19 is proposing to open the vaccination campaign for minors aged 12 to 17 years old by mid-October. In his report during President Duterte's talk to the people on Wednesday night, NTF Chief and Vaccine Czar, Secretary Galvez Jr., said the government can vaccinate about 12 million minors with the arrival of the additional 20 million doses in the first week next month. Let's listen in.
Kailangan po talaga yung So we are proposing, Mr. President, to open up the vaccination for children by mid-October. Kasi by the mid-October, may additional pa tayong 20 million na darating plus yung 23 million. Kayang-kaya na po natin vaccinate natin yung 12 million po na mga bata na 12 to 17. Pero ang recommendation po natin, mauna muna po yung may comorbidities at saka po yung mga anak po ng mga healthcare workers. And then also, we are also recommending na considering na malapit na po matapos ang ating vaccination target by December, by November po or even earlier, pwede na po nating i-open ang general public. Actually po, yung projection po natin dati, in fairness po sa ating mga A2 at saka A3, nabigyan na po natin sila ng time na, na magpabakuna. And nakita po natin dito ang recommendation ng mga marami. Kailangan po talaga yung vaccination strategy natin para makuha po natin yung yung ibang mga mayroong hesitancy is yung tinatawag nating family approach. Ibig sabihin, if we will secure our family and secure yung yung tinatawag nating yung place of work, malaki po ang chances na bababa po yung kaso natin.
Almost 70% of the target population in Metro Manila has already been fully vaccinated, which means it is near the target of possible herd immunity for the population in the country's capital region. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque, in his regular press briefing on Thursday, announced the latest data that those fully vaccinated in the national capital region have reached 6,760,863, or 69.16% of the target population. Take a look.
So nationally po, ang ating first dose ay 30.18%, ang mga naka-second dose na ay 25.12%, at tumaas po ang ating daily jobs to 527,604. Sa Metro Manila naman po, ang ating first dose ay 8,323,130. Ito po ay 85.14% ng coverage ratio. At ang ating second dose po ay umabot na ng 6,760,863. Malapit na po sa 70%, nasa 69.16%. Tumaas po ang ating daily jobs para sa Metro Manila, nasa 110,326 na po tayo.
Earlier, the National Task Force Against COVID-19 said that it is also waiting for the green light to COVID-19 booster shots or a third dose of the vaccine could be given to health frontliners, especially those who are directly handling COVID-19 patients. Now, it is also awaiting the go signal from the World Health Organization for vaccines to be administered to children aged 12 years old and above. So far, the Philippine Food and Drug Administration has already revised emergency use authorization earlier to granted to Pfizer and Moderna to allow its administration to children 12 years old and above. Malacanang has earlier said that it will start today to vaccinate 50% of the population against COVID-19 to achieve the so-called herd immunity.
To the U.S. now, where on Wednesday authorized the use of boosters for Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine for people aged over 65, as well as adults at high risk of severe disease and those in high exposure jobs. The announcement means a significant part of the population, amounting to tens of millions of Americans, are now eligible for a third shot 6 months after their second. The decision was expected and came after an independent expert panel convened by the regulatory agency last week voted in favor of recommending the move. The panel, however, rejected an initial plan by the White House to fully approve Pfizer boosters to everyone aged 16 and over in what amounted to a rare rebuke of President Biden's administration. Pfizer COVID-19 boosters are currently being debated by a separate body of experts convened by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, which may recommend further specifics about recipients. For example, if obesity is considered as putting a person at high risk of severe COVID, that definition would cover more than 42% of the U.S. population aged over 20. The CDC may also have to define which workplaces and other settings might lead to frequent institutional or occupational exposure to SARS-CoV-2.
Staying in the U.S., President Joe Biden addressed a COVID-19 summit of world leaders with a promise to donate a historic extra 500 million vaccines to countries struggling to overcome the pandemic. Take a look.
The United States is buying another 500 million doses of Pfizer to donate to low and middle-income countries around the world. This is another 500 million doses that will all be shipped by this time next year. And it brings our total commitment of donated vaccines to over 1.1 billion vaccines to be donated. We've all suffered. The United States has lost more than 670,000 of our fellow Americans. Worldwide, the death toll is above 4.5 million people. 4.5 million people. And this is a global tragedy. And we're not going to solve this crisis with half measures or middle-of-the-road ambitions. We need to go big. The United States is leading the world on vaccination donations. We need, as we're doing that, we need other high-income countries to deliver on their own ambitious vaccine donations and pledges.
Despite the development of safe and highly effective vaccines in record-breaking time, huge disparities exist between countries with ample supply and others that have rarely or barely begun their immunization campaigns.
In other news, the World Health Organization strengthened its air quality guidelines. As WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said, air pollution now contributes to 7 million deaths a year. The WHO's new guidelines recommended air quality levels for 6 pollutants. Let's listen in.
Today, we're proud to launch the updated WHO Global Air Quality Guidelines, which provide clear evidence of the damage air pollution inflicts on human health. That's why these new guidelines include low recommended levels for pollutants, including particulate matter, nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, and ozone. I urge all countries to put these guidelines to use to save lives, support healthy communities, and help address the climate crisis.
WHO is preparing a very big report to be presented at the COP26 to strengthen the importance of having more action on mitigating the causes of climate change, because those mitigation interventions will have enormous health benefits. And most of the health benefits of mitigating the causes of climate change will come in the sense that they will reduce the levels of air pollution, and by doing so, you can imagine the incredible number of lives we will save.
The new guidelines come just in time for the COP26 Global Climate Summit held in Glasgow from October 31st to November 12. The WHO said that alongside climate change, air pollution was one of the biggest environmental threats to human health.
U.S. President Joe Biden and his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron had a friendly phone call to defuse a deep row over submarine sales to Australia, promising to meet in person to repair the transatlantic relationship. Watch this.
The leader level. In terms of the tone of the call, it was friendly. It was one where we're hopeful, and the president is hopeful. This is a step in returning to normal in a long, important, abiding relationship that the United States has with France. It was about 30 minutes long. The president, during this call, as we said in the readout, acknowledged that there could be there could have been more discussion in advance of the announcement, and that was an important message for him to convey during that conversation.
The call was the first between Biden and Macron since France recalled its ambassador over the surprise U.S. announcement of a deal to build nuclear submarines for Australia, scuppering a previous French deal to sell conventional submarines. Paris called the U.S.-Australian plan, which was launched as part of a new Indo-Pacific Security Group, along with Britain, a stab in the back, and also pulled its ambassador from Australia. In a joint statement after the call, the two leaders vowed to launch in-depth consultation for ensuring confidence and to meet in Europe at the end of October. And also said Macron would order France's ambassador back to Washington next week.
Now, this submarine row plunged Franco-U.S. ties into what some analysts viewed as the most acute crisis since the U.S.-led invasion of Iraq in 2003, which Paris also opposed. Now, Australia's leader said he is being given the cold shoulder by French President Emmanuel Macron after the controversial scrapping of the submarine deal, but vowed to be patient in repairing trade relations. Take a look.
We've worked together over many years to countenance the threat of terrorism here on our own shores, working with partners all around the world. And in an increasingly uncertain world, it is our responsibility to ensure we keep Australians safe and we're able to ensure that we can pursue our national interests and the peace and stability of our region. That Australia will always look to others, but we will never have to leave it to others. That we'll be able to sit at the table with our partners and our friends to create a more secure and more stable world, particularly here in the Indo-Pacific. As I embark now to go and see our friends in the United States and meet with many others, both from Europe, from the UK and the United States. This is all about keeping Australians safe.
Now, AUKUS, the new three-way strategic alliance between Washington, Canberra, and London, is seen aimed at countering the rising power of China. France accused its allies of a stab in the back after learning the U.S. had secretly led talks about the new strategic alliance and struck the deal for the delivery of American nuclear-powered submarines to Australia. Australia informed France only hours before pulling out of the submarine deal, according to the French government.
Hundreds of firefighters are battling the windy fire to protect several groves of giant sequoias in the United States. A number of separate fires were converging on the California woodland that is home to the huge trees.
Most of those trees were unaffected by the fire. Some of them did get fire at the bottoms of them, and we've mopped those up pretty well. So a lot of that area was pre-treated by crews. That means they went in there and limbed up trees and cut down dead trees and made it safe for the public. And that work really helped when this fire came through to protect those giant sequoias. As giant as these trees are, the anomaly is that their seeds are absolutely tiny, about the size of a pinhead, but flat. And they will produce millions of these seeds, but they need fire to do that. So they'll shower seeds down when a fire comes through. The chance of any one of those seeds becoming a giant sequoia is very low, but millions of seeds are released when a fire like this comes through. This ain't their first rodeo. These trees have been through many fires. You can see that on the scars that they have. So I'm confident that most of those trees will be largely unaffected by the fire.
As of this morning, only one particular tree that had sustained burn. And so that sustained burn, our helicopters were able to drop water into it. It was actually at the top where the burn was. What our firefighters and our regional advisors are doing is that they're assessing where it's actually appropriate to do that. Not all trees would benefit from that wrapping. And so, I've seen several today on the other side of the fire. And so it just depends on what's determined.
California woodland that is home to the huge trees, highlighting the terrifying power of wildfires to consume everything in their path. Giant sequoias and their relatives, the California redwoods, are adapted to fires and typically endure lots of fires in their lifetime, the heat from which helps their cones to open, allowing the seeds to disperse. But longer, hotter, and more aggressive fires can damage them, sometimes irreparably, and California has recently seen multiple severe fire seasons in a row.
Meanwhile, emergency workers with the Spanish Environmental Emergencies Intervention Unit and the National Geological Institute monitor and measure levels of toxic gas that could be emerging from the Cumbre Vieja volcano in Spain. Take a look. Experts are expecting a slow-moving mass of lava to slide towards the island's western coast when its interaction with the sea is likely to cause explosions and trigger toxic gas emissions. Experts are working on the Vivolca volcanic emergency plan, and they say there are two lava flows, one to the north and one further south, which is barely moving. David Calvo, an expert with the Involcan Volcanology Institute, said the lava had slowed down a lot because it is reaching a very flat area, but it is also gaining height. And there are areas where it is already 15 meters thick. If the lava, which is a temperature of 1,100 degrees Celsius or 2,012 degrees Fahrenheit, continues to move at the same pace, it will reach the sea later on Wednesday or possibly Thursday. And when it gets there, he said there will be a huge battle of the titans between the water and the lava. Involcan experts witnessed the same phenomenon in 2018 at the Kilauea volcano in Hawaii, where 16 people were hurt by the explosion of fragments and one person almost lost a leg, he said. When the lava reaches the shore, it will also send clouds of acidic, toxic gas into the air generated by the interaction with the seawater, which can be dangerous to inhale, according to experts. Now, Calvo said the volcano was also putting out some 10,000 tons of sulfur dioxide emissions per day, which showed the pace, the intensity of the eruption is not going to decrease. Involcan believes the eruption of La Cumbre Vieja could last between 24 and 84 days. The eruption of this island of some 85,000 people, the first in 50 years, may have caused huge damages over a vast area, but so far, nobody has been hurt. The local authorities also urged the population to avoid contact with volcanic ash, warning it could cause damage to the respiratory tract and eyes, as well as skin irritation.
Now, in a characteristically colorful speech before the United Nations, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson cast UN climate talks in Glasgow in November as a last chance for humanity, and also made a reference to a Muppet song. Johnson voiced hope that all countries would emulate Britain's goals among the world's most ambitious to cut carbon emissions by 68% by 2030 compared with 1990 levels. Watch this.
And when Kermit the Frog sang, "It's not easy being green. You remember that one? I want you to know that he was wrong. He was wrong. It is easy. It's not only easy, it's lucrative and it's right to be green. Although he was also unnecessarily rude to Miss Piggy, I thought, Kermit the Frog. Why? The Glasgow COP26 summit is the turning point for humanity. We must limit the rise in temperatures, whose appalling effects were visible even this summer, to 1.5 degrees. We must come together in a collective coming of age.
In other environment news, a crowd of pedestrians and cyclists walk along the Champs-Élysées towards the Arc de Triomphe, freshly wrapped in silver blue fabric for Paris Car-Free Day. Take a look. Now, Paris held its first car-free day in 2015 in a central zone, expanding the initiative in 2017 to other districts within the city limits. Paris Mayor Anne Hidalgo has sought to use the annual event to curb vehicle use and reduce air pollution. Pedestrians wandering along the most famous thoroughfare in Paris could view the Arc de Triomphe in its temporary guise as an art installation. The imposing war memorial has been wrapped in 25,000 square meters of silver blue recyclable polypropylene. It's the signature of Bulgarian-born artist Christo, who died last year, and his wife and collaborator Jean-Claude. They had dreamt of sheathing the monument since renting a nearby apartment in the 1960s, but neither lived to see their strange vision come to life. Now, this temporary installation officially opened on September 18, and the monument will remain wrapped for 16 days in order for pedestrians to interact with the fabric. The Place Charles de Gaulle intersection will also be temporarily turned into a car-free area.
A Taiwanese environmental group has designed a marine vacuum cleaner to help in the island's fight against floating garbage. Dubbed the Azure Fighter, the catamaran is a prototype electric trash skimmer rated to scoop up floating marine garbage around fishing harbors and marinas.
为什么会有这个构想？我觉得可能跟我自己念海洋环境的背景有相关。然后我又很爱潜水，那每次潜水的时候，往水面上看都是垃圾，然后又往底下看，常常会觉得，为什么我们的海这么脏？即便我游了很远，还是很脏。是不是有什么方法可以解决这些垃圾，或是现有的清洁方法？是不是有什么困境？我们希望它未来到每个港湾，它能够知道这个港的垃圾会在哪里，这个季节它会在哪里，它自己去收。困难的事让机器做，重复性高的事情让机器做，危险性高的事情让机器做。我们希望它就是这样子的一个存在，任何一个港湾都可以有一台，它每天照时间就去把垃圾帮我们捡回来。
And the news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back.
This portion is brought to you by North Luzon Express Terminal.
Kumanta, sumaya tayong lahat. Saya-saya.
Welcome back. The chairman of the U.S. Federal Reserve called on lawmakers to raise the nation's borrowing limit urgently on Wednesday, warning that failure to pay government debts would do severe damage to the economy. Take a look.
Good afternoon. At the Federal Reserve, we are strongly committed to achieving the monetary policy goals that Congress has given us: maximum employment and price stability. The path of the economy continues to depend on the course of the virus, and risks to the economic outlook remain. So it's just very important that the debt ceiling be raised in a timely fashion so that the United States can pay its bills when and as they come due. That's a critically important thing. The failure to do that is something that could result in severe reactions, severe damage to the economy and to the financial markets, and it's just not something that we could contemplate, that we should contemplate. I think we can all agree that the United States shouldn't default on any of its obligations, should pay them when and as due, and that no one should assume that the Fed or anyone else can protect the markets or the economy in the event of a failure, fully protect in the event of a failure.
Powell's admonition came after 6 former U.S. Treasury secretaries also urged the Senate to overcome the impasse without delay to avoid the harmful fallout should Washington default on its debt. However, the plea for quick action looks set to fall on deaf ears, as the opposition leader in the Senate has steadfastly refused to cooperate with the ruling Democrats to increase the debt ceiling. And that could lead to chaos in financial markets, according to officials warning this. The Democratic-controlled House of Representatives passed a measure that would suspend the debt limit until after next year's midterm elections and fund government operations until December 3. But it's now stuck in the Senate, which has until September 30 to take action to avoid a shutdown and a second deadline of mid to late October to suspend the debt ceiling.
Meanwhile, Taiwan has applied to join a major trans-Pacific trade deal, according to officials, days after China said it also wanted to become a member of the agreement. Now, John Deng, Taipei's lead trade negotiator, said he expected Chinese opposition, but portrayed Taiwan as a more reliable free trade partner. Watch this.
CPTPP 是当前亚太地区甚至是全球最重要的区域经济整合协定，其成员多为台湾重要的贸易伙伴，占台湾国际贸易总额超过24%。台湾不能置外于世界，一定要融入区域经济，无论是双边或是多边，对我们都非常重要。
中国在国际上一直阻挠台湾的国际活动空间，我想这个是大家看到的这个事情。因此，如果中国先入会，台湾的入会案当然会有相当的风险。
China said it opposed Taiwan joining a major trans-Pacific trade deal just days after Beijing said it wanted to become a member of the same agreement. Signed by 11 Asia-Pacific countries in 2018, the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, or CPTPP, is the region's biggest free trade pact and accounts for about 13.5% of the global economy. It was also designed to keep China, which has its own regional trade deal, locked out. But former President Donald Trump, who disdained multilateral agreements, pulled out of the deal in 2017. The CPTPP is the successor to those negotiations and includes Australia, Brunei, Canada, Chile, Japan, Malaysia, Mexico, Peru, New Zealand, Singapore, and Vietnam. Taiwan had been lobbying to join the pact for years, but on Thursday made a formal application.
South Africa's embattled National Airline today flew its first plane since March 2020 after emerging from bankruptcy proceedings. Once Africa's second largest airline after Ethiopian Airlines, SAA had survived for decades on government bailouts and was shedding routes even before the COVID pandemic struck. The government agreed in a 51% stake to a group of investors called the Takatsu Consortium, opening the way to a potential injection of $200 million. Even after a steep bailout of more than $500 million and a restructuring of its debt, the airline only emerged from bankruptcy after slashing hundreds of jobs. In addition to the domestic route that resumed today, SAA plans to begin regional services next week to Accra, Kinshasa, Lusaka, Harare, and Maputo.
Back here in the Philippines, the food service sector is asking the government to ease the vaccination requirement for their employees under the Alert Level System, or ALS, as many still find it difficult to secure COVID-19 shots. Restaurant owners of the Philippines, Resto PH President Eric Peng, said at a Laging Handa briefing on Wednesday that not all restaurants may be able to comply. Watch this.
Ang habol lang naman po namin ay daan-daan pagbubukas dahil hindi naman po kami nag-aangad na bilisan po natin ang pag-reopening dahil kailangan din po namin intindihin ang problema po ng ating mga ICU at ating mga medical frontliners. Kahit dahan-dahan lang po kami mag-open, happy na po kami. Kahit 10% lang po naman ngayon, it's better than zero, pero matagal pa po yan bago kami makapagbawi at maging normal. Kaya sana kung talaga po namang tama ang datos na nagiging stabilized na po yung ating COVID cases, ay sabay po sana nating pag-relax po ng restrictions at pag-increase po ng capacity ng restaurants. Well, nakakaawa din po kasi mga empleyado ng restaurant. Marami rin pong hindi nakapagbakuna dahil sa lugar nila, hindi pa po sila natatawagan or naka-partial vaccination pa lang sila at iniintay po nila yung second dose. Lalo na po kung yung Sputnik, medyo matagal pong iniintayan ng second dose. Kaya sana naman po maintindihan at mabalanse din natin ang problema ng restaurant industry. Gusto naman ng karamihan na makapagbukas ng bakunado ang staff. Kaya lang po yung ibang lugar po talagang mga empleyado sa mga barangay nila nahirapan po sila makakuha ng vaccine. Yun naman po mga restaurants na nagkikater naman po talaga sa vaccinated. Hinahanap po ng customers namin right now. Pag nalaman nilang vaccinated ang staff, papasok po talaga sila. At nagtatanong pa kung vaccinated ba yung staff namin o hindi. So siguro ngayon lang naman po, kailangan po natin siguro ng konting tulungan, compromise para lang po malagpasan po natin itong alert level 4.
In the Essex countryside of England, energy crisis is looming large. Here's Patricia for the report.
The tranquil landscape of flat farmland and small villages in the Essex countryside in southeast England seems a world away from Britain's escalating energy crisis. But fertilizer and carbon dioxide shortages are beginning to bite at places like Wicks Manor Farm, which rears pigs for pork and grows crops. Fertilizer is needed for crops and carbon dioxide for the humane slaughter of livestock, as well as in the production and packaging of sausages, burger, bacon, and ham. If the shortages continue, there are fears farms like Wicks Manor could be left unable to slaughter animals and make low-yield harvests unprofitable. Britain is not alone in being hit by surging gas prices caused by global supply shortage, driving a spike in wholesale costs that threaten to hike bills for consumers. But the sharp increase led two UK fertilizer production sites, which rely on natural gas, to halt operations last week, with a knock-on effect on livestock farming and the supply chain. Carbon dioxide is a byproduct of fertilizer production, and the two plants account for up to 60% of Britain's carbon dioxide supply. Let's listen in to farmer and owner of Wicks Manor, Fergus Howie on his concerns regarding the CO2 shortage.
Exactly. So on the back of these concerns of too many pigs on farms, up to about 100,000 pigs more than there ought to be still on farm at the moment, up and down the UK, causing welfare issues. On the back of that, we've now got CO2 shortage, meaning that abattoirs can't process those pigs. And if they are processed, you can't pack the meat for sale because it hasn't got a long enough shelf life. It's crazy that there is only 2 plants, crazy that they are both under foreign investment. Real concerns on immediate food supply chain. Longer term, farmers need artificial fertiliser to grow their crops for next year's harvest. Rumbling in the background is the concern over next year's harvest. If it's a low harvest because there's no fertiliser to boost those crop yields, prices are going to go up. So what the government needs to do is do a deal with CF Industries to open both plants. Then we need to have some negotiation with the European plants so that we have consistency of supply that we would normally expect from those foreign imports of power and artificial fertiliser, CO2 and artificial fertiliser. And then longer term, we need to start looking at why we have such a fragile food supply chain in the UK, and we need to have investment in more plants, or different technology, so we don't rely on natural gas for.
Before the CO2 crisis, Howie was already sending 25% fewer pigs to slaughter due to chronic staff shortages at slaughterhouses caused by a double whammy of the Brexit and the pandemic. Reporting from London, United Kingdom, I'm Patricia Rodriguez. We live in interesting times.
Thank you, Patricia. Now, here is a great example of an autonomous self-driving robot. This one, operated by Starship Technology, delivers grocery and takeaway food.
Pandemic boosted it. Of course, I think there was such a need for contactless delivery in the pandemic, and we're really proud to serve the people that needed it most throughout the pandemic. But actually, what we've seen is that demand hasn't dropped off after the pandemic. It's maintained, and I think people now are using this stuff more readily, and there's a real need for that stuff now. So the robot has what they call a bubble of awareness. So it's got different cameras and sensor suites. So if the robot's coming down a path, it can sense what's coming towards it. And if something steps in that bubble of awareness, the robot will assess what it needs to do. It will slow down or come to a safe stop and assess what it needs to do. It can go round you. It can pull to a side. It can basically... The robot will get out of your way and allow the human to go past. The robot can also see where it is to the nearest inch. So it uses computer vision while it's going around the pavement, and with that it can see where it is, where it's located to the nearest inch. Good one. So when the robot's going down the road, it's mechanically locked. It's really hard to get the lock. It's only the phone of the user that's ordered that can actually unlock that robot as it's going down. It has obviously got cameras and sensors on it, but if a robot were to be picked up, it's got a piercingly loud alarm on it as well. So all of those things sort of combined, and they're tracked 100% of the time as well. So if it does go off, an alarm goes off, the operator will get a sort of notification to say something's happening to this robot as well, and we can either send a field assistant down or contact the local authority.
The company says COVID lockdowns boosted delivery, but that it has since remained strong. They've joined forces with supermarket chains Co-op and Tesco, among other retailers. A U.S. expansion is already underway, and they hope to continue their rollout in Europe in the next 12 months.
I wish we had that here.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. Welcome to the Philippines soon. And that's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I am CJ Caro. The news continues tomorrow.
And at the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. We'll see you back tomorrow. I'm Alma Angeles, and we live in interesting times.